This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for another episode of Just for the Spell of It. And Gary is sitting there in his bright orange shirt today. So you must be feeling alive and peppy and ready to go.
Well, this shirt helps that. And there is a story to go with this shirt. Um, every year, the beginning of March, there's a tournament in Escondido, California. This year, it was just before the pandemic shut everything down. I'm hoping it'll happen next March, but who knows? Um, Playing this tournament, I've been playing it every year for at least 12 years, maybe longer. It's a fundraiser for the literacy project at the local library.
Okay.
And not only can you play as an individual, but they encourage teams of 4 people to come in as a team and play against other teams.
Okay.
And you had to name your team. And one of my friends, um, Amnon Myers, he's very witty, and he named the team Orange is the New Blank.
Oh, I like that.
Okay.
Okay.
And we all adorned ourselves in orange, and we show up at the tournament, and we had no trouble finding one another.
I'm sure. Well, that's a good story. Uh,
Uh,
Orange is the new blank. And I'll have to remember that.
okay.
So today you said that you wanted to talk about somebody who has inspired you in Scrabble. Uh,
Yes.
and I recognize the name
Mm-hmm.
because he happens to be a friend of mine on uh, Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Well, the gentleman's name is, uh, all of a sudden, I draw a blank. Mike
Michael Barron.
Barron. Michael Barron. Mike is a professor at a university in Arizona. Um, when I first started playing and went to tournaments, I met up with Mike, although I don't think I ever played a game against Mike. And the reason for that is he's one of the very top players in the country. And I never really reached that level. And so I would see him, and he's very gregarious and he's fun to talk to. He has a never ending smile on his face. Um, Being a professor, being a teacher, he can relate to people, he can share information in a way that you can understand it. And he still remains today in the Scrabble community, and he's put out many publications. One publication that I'm sure everybody out there who is really involved with Scrabble knows about. It's called the Scrabble Cheat Sheet,
Okay.
and he's the author of the cheat sheet.
Okay.
Many of the things that are on the sheet, it's an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper printed front and back. So he's tried to condense all of the major points about Scrabble on that sheet. There's a 2-letter list on the sheet, and it also displays the hooks for the 2-letter words. The hooks meaning single letters that can connect on the front of the word, single letters that can connect on the back of the word. Also on that sheet, I think he has the 3 highest valued stems in terms of highest probability of having them on your rack. He also gives you certain high vowel dumps, especially the shorter words, 5-letter words that contain 4 vowels,
Wow.
4-letter words that contain 3 vowels, etc. So if you haven't had the opportunity to get a cheat sheet, just send me a request by an email and I will send you a file to your email.
Okay.
It's very helpful. Now, a lot of people, when they first start, will hand it out to them when they come to club. And here's the problem with any tool. Uh, when you're studying, you use the tool very often. And when someone first comes to most clubs around the country, we allow you to use the cheat sheet for, let's say, a month's time. After that, you're a member of the group. You have to put the cheat sheet away when you're playing.
Right.
So when you're using it as a learning tool, you have to use it in a way that you don't become so dependent on it.
Right.
You have to start putting the pieces of information into your own memory. And it's not an easy job at first, but it becomes easier the more you do it. And so today I was thinking about Mike Barron and all of the things he's put out. And there's another publication, and I don't know how widespread this is. He may have put it out initially to um, the Scrabble community through NASPA,
Okay.
North American Scrabble Players Association. It was printed in 2007, and it's called Scrabble Tips. And I'd just like to read something and then
Sure.
maybe talk about it.
Okay.
So the first thing he has here is a quote from George Bernard Shaw, who said, "We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." And that's a very interesting way of putting it. And in the Scrabble world, people who really like the game and really get into it have a really hard time putting it down. And the thing I like about Scrabble, and I thought about this when I first started and I was in my 40s, you look around the room and you see everything from teenagers to people that are very old. And since it's not polite in all occasions to go up and say, "How old are you?"
Right.
But I know that we have many people in their 90s. And over the years, we've seen people in their 100s that are still playing Scrabble. Well, I know right now I'm in my 70s and my knees are locking up and my shoulders hurt. So I'm no longer a tennis or racquetball player. There are a lot of things that I had to cross off my checklist. I don't think I could play a whole 18 holes of golf anymore, but there's nothing to stop me from playing a game of Scrabble. Uh, Now, there is one worry out there that you don't worry about till it happens. And when it happens, you're no longer worried about that. And it's something called Alzheimer's. Um, there's a story about a lady. Uh, we were playing our club over at a restaurant here in Laguna Woods Village, and we were playing every Wednesday and Thursday night. And it was a room that was adjacent to a restaurant.
Okay.
Now, obviously, she and her husband went out to dinner, and just about every Wednesday night that we were playing at around 7:30, she would show up and stick her head in the room and say, "Oh, you guys are playing Scrabble. I love to play Scrabble." And I would try to invite her in and everything. And she would say, "Oh, not tonight." And she would disappear. And as a director, that's very annoying. Number one, she interrupted while people were playing.
Sure.
And number two, um, you want to build your club. So I was anxious to have her come and play with us.
Sure.
And so she was like teasing me and very annoying. Well, I came to find out that she has Alzheimer's.
Okay.
All right. So she can do some things. She remembers Scrabble, but she probably can't spell dog or cat.
Right.
And uh, Scrabble clubs and Scrabble players are supposed to be all welcoming. And we have had situations where people came into play and they sat down and we knew that there was something going on there where they couldn't really do the game.
Sure.
So then, as a director, I have to very politely bring this up to the player and ask them to back off because it's not fair to the other players.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
people in the room, as director, it's my responsibility to connect you with someone. Even when it's a brand new person, let's say you came for the first time
Sure.
and you played a lot at home with family, with friends, you're not going to really know all the rules.
Right.
We use clocks, we keep score in a certain way. There are a certain number of steps to ending your turn, and you're expected to learn that and play in that manner. And so when a player first comes in the room, I try to play them in the first game. And I always say, this will be a learning game, and I'm going to teach you some of the uh, things that we do as a club player. And sometimes they're really intimidated. I have to play the director of the club the first game, and I try to put those fears aside. And I tell them we're going to play it as an open game. And sometimes from the very beginning, I pick your tiles. Well, what do they do? When you're at home, you put in your hand and you grab it, a whole handful of tiles and you take them out and oops, you drew 9. You're only supposed to draw 7. And so they put 2 back in the bag. And I said, no, that's not how we do it in club. I said, let them know up front. There are penalties for not doing things the Scrabble way.
Sure.
So you're not allowed to overdraw. And the way you do that with to be certain, you draw them out one at a time. And then I show them the tile, which we use, which is a pro tile. It's different from the tiles that usually come in the game. The ones that come with the game are wooden. They're smooth on one side. The second side is fairly smooth also, but the letter is burned into the
Right.
other side. When you're playing with regular tiles and your opponent puts down a blank, you can assume it's a blank, but before uh, you take your turn, they've taken their turn, they hit the clock, it's on your time now. The first thing you do is you say hold, HOLD. That means that the game is not going on. Your clock is running when you say hold.
Okay.
Then I take the blank that they played, I flip it over to the other side to make sure it really
Blank.
is a blank.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. Now, if I didn't do that, and let's say it was a letter Q and they put it face down and all I can see is the top side, if I go on with my turn it remains a blank the whole game.
Got
And
it.
then until the end of the game, or when three blanks show, one's on the board, two more show up, uh-oh, something's wrong here.
Got it.
So
Okay.
I share that with people up front because they don't know that rule. And I don't want them to be taken advantage of by other people while I'm explaining it to them. These are the kinds of explanations and guidance that Mike Barron has passed on to other people.
How wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can think of another very top player who he's not very approachable, but at the same time, when he's in the stream of sharing information, very valuable. He is a past national champion, a past world champion. He runs a club at the Bridge Club on Manhattan. He runs a Scrabble club there. His
Huh.
name is Joel Sherman. And he too has put out some etiquette lists. His kind of list leans to things like decorum when you're at the club. Most people come in and they're so excited, and some people who are very talkative become very giddy, and they don't understand it unless someone shares that Scrabble is one of the quietest games. You're only supposed to speak when you call a director if there's something wrong. You just raise your hand and say director, and then when the director comes over, you would present what you
Sure.
think is wrong. Or when you are challenging, you yell challenge. But other than that, during the game, you're not supposed to comment on what they have. You're not to sit there and worry out loud, oh my gosh, I have all vowels,
Yeah.
or, I can't get a playable word. If those situations come up, you're supposed to deal with them silently to yourself. When the game is all over, you're allowed to speak and share. However, if other games are ongoing around you, you're supposed to take your chatter out into the hallway or wait till all the games are finished before you start having your conversation.
Oh,
Now, a lot of time, those conversations are trying to pull at you. You want to ask your opponent, what should I have done here? Uh, that was a great play that you made there. Does that word take any hooks? Those kinds of questions should only happen after all the games in the room are finished, or you take them out in the hallway so you're not interfering. When you're playing a game, especially when you come down towards the end of the game, and if uh, you're thinking very hard about where to place this word, that chatter just messes up your head.
right. Right.
And there are certain people that it bothers more than others. And the most upset that you'll see in a Scrabble club is when someone's in that position and the noise level is too high in the room, and that person starts screaming up, be quiet,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And some clubs are noisier than others. It sort of reflects uh, the level of what the director can handle. Uh,
Okay.
and as a director, I don't want to be shushing people and sending them out into the hallway. In fact, one of the rooms we use, when you step outside the door, you're outside. The doorway leads directly to the courtyard.
Okay.
It could be snowing outside or raining outside, and you don't want to deal with that. So it's best that people know those rules of etiquette. If you don't come across Joel Sherman's list, you sort of learn them one at a time in the Scrabble Club when someone else offends the rule or when you do. And as a new person, you don't want to be offending people. So maybe those are some of the questions you should ask when you come into the room.
Absolutely. I mean, I think some people probably believe, it's this social club, which in some ways it is because you've made a lot of friends through Scrabble,
Yeah.
but there's a time and a place during that club, as you're saying, to actually socialize.
hmm
Um, and I think that's important because I wouldn't have suspected that.
Um, I'm looking here at this piece by Mike Barron. He says, on the average, you will have 13 turns per game. Consider each turn a riddle to solve, or a question to answer, where the question is along the lines of, given this rack on this board, my opponent's last play, the present score, and the present word knowledge, what is my best play? So he's telling us to think about all of those possibilities. Now, here's what new players do. They really want to play some words when they come in. That's what they think the game is all about. It's just about playing the next word. So they come in and they get this rack of letters and they fiddle them around. And that's a good thing to do. Keep interchanging them back and forth on your rack till you find a good word. They find a word and they plop it down on the board, and they're pleased with themselves. Well, yes, that's part of the game. But what people don't remember, or maybe not, maybe they never even considered it before they came. You're now in a competitive game. You're both trying to win. When it's your turn, you're playing offense. And when it's not your turn, you're playing defense. You're only playing two people at the board. A lot of people that come to club have never played two people at the board.
Right.
They've played three or four people at home.
Right.
Now, that becomes a different kind of competition. Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's say there are three people at the board. Um, let's say because I've been playing a long time and I know a lot of that crazy Scrabble jargon, I might be the highest rated player.
Okay.
And then player two has played less than me. Um, they haven't played as long as I have. Uh, so they might be the second rated player at the board. And then we have the third person who has just begun to play. All right. And who will win the game
Well,
and why?
yeah. The assumption is that you most likely will play the game because you're going to be looking at the hot spots and what that word value is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas number 2 and number 3, they just want to make a word.
Got it.
Okay? They
So,
both have points, but it's, oh, I can put cats there and I have a word.
okay, you are absolutely right. There's one more factor that most people don't consider, and that factor is whoever is the weakest player, the weakest link, the person that plays after the weakest link is going to be the winner.
Oh, okay.
And that's because of the lack of information that the weakest link has. So the weakest link will play a word and be very happy with it and hasn't even stopped to consider what kind of opening they make for the person that's playing after them. So in this scenario with 3 players, let's say the weakest link, then the number 2 player, and then me. The number 2 player will have the advantage, even though I might be better than the number 2
Okay.
player. So that happens all the time in family games or in just in general.
Right.
That happens. And sometimes when you're playing and it's, oh, how does that person win all the time? Well, if I were to walk in a room, I would want to sit down right after the weakest player. And since the turns generally go counterclockwise, if you know how good or poor those people play, you can automatically pick the winning seat.
That's interesting. I found the last couple games that we've played, Words with Friends, um, I'll automatically spot a word and I'll say, oh, that can give me 30 points, and I'm looking at it. But then I'm also looking at what you just put down and you got 60 points, and it's like, I've got this word here, but 30 points is going to really help me beat you. And so
Mm-hmm.
I start looking at what can I hook on? Okay.
Yeah.
Or can I take that same word and place it somewhere else and maybe get 40 points?
Yeah.
So um it's it's not that difficult to do. And I'm hoping casual players will understand this. Even in your casual game, it'd be more fun to be able to look at the board that way as well.
Well, that's like what Mike just said. Look at it as a puzzle. Don't just jump for the first place. Think about what your opponent might do if you put it there. Because sometimes you can come up with a high scoring word, but it just leaves a triple letter score begging for a Q or a Z.
Right.
And if those letters haven't shown yet, you can, your opponent might come back and a Q or a Z going 2 ways on a triple letter score is 60 points. And then if it hits a double word score, you've got over 100 points sitting there. So, keep those things in mind. Now, he says an average game is 13 turns.
Hmm.
In things that I've written, I've suggested that the average game each person takes 17 turns.
Right.
But that reflects the number, how long your words are.
Right. I can
Uh,
tell. Yeah.
and so I read this 2 or 3 times thinking about, no, 13 turns isn't the average, but I don't play as many long words as Mike does.
Okay.
And sometimes if you see 2 beginners playing, they might take 25 turns each during a game because they're playing a lot of 2 and 3 letter words. So that is that. He says, on my 13 turns, I aspire to go 10-3 or better in terms of best play selections. Now that's an expert talking,
Okay.
best play selections, because when we're beginning, we're happy to find any word. Now, what
Right.
I try to implant, when it's my version of telling people how to do it, find that word, your first impression word, pause, find a better word. There usually is a better word. Don't get hung up on, oh, I found this, boom, I played it,
Right.
because it's not necessarily going to be the best word. And sometimes, let's say, if there are two words that are about the same number of points, then look at where you're going to place it. Is it going to give your opponent a big scoring opportunity? And is there another word that might be 2, 3, 4 points less, but would be better strategically played? And
Okay.
so we have to think about that if we're playing competitively. Now, some people are listening and they're saying, oh, that seems like too much work. Well, if it is too much work, don't go to club, or go to club without the expectation of winning. Now,
Okay.
some people at that point say, no one's going to want to play with me. Well, that's not true. However, well, there's no however to, about that. Players like me and players better than me are willing to play anyone. If I'm playing a raw novice who is not interested in taking the time, the final score might allow me to score 500, 600 points. I don't get that opportunity when I play Mike Barron.
Right.
So I'm taking a personal satisfaction in playing whoever it is. Now, there have been people who have come to the club and they only want to play the other lowest rated players in the club. If it's a large club, let's say 20 or more people, as director, I may have the opportunity to pair people, the lower ones with the lower ones, the higher ones with the higher ones. But my club happens right now to have an average of 12 people in it. So even, let's say, I took the lowest player with the second lowest player in round one. We play 4 rounds. So among them, one is going to win and one is going to lose.
Right.
Now in round two, I take all the winners of round one and match them with each other. So even though the lowest player in the club is the lowest player, maybe they won game one against another lower player.
Got it.
Now they're going to get paired with a winner, and those are probably going to be higher rated players. Now, if the lower rated player says, oh, I don't want to play them, as director, I can't do that. Once we begin playing, the statistics determine who you play next.
Okay.
And just to give you a bit of information about how learning works, I became aware 30, 35 years ago when I started playing. The only time I really learned something was when I played higher rated people.
Right.
They would play words I didn't know. I would write them down. They used strategies I didn't know. I would try to remember them. They used the hot spots by playing letters in two directions, where I was playing my, while they were playing their words, the lower player was crisscrossing words on the board and not getting extra points for all the hooks.
Okay.
So those are important strategies that you learn when you're playing against higher rated players. And so I would encourage you, as I encourage myself, to play higher rated people.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the only way that you can actually truly get better if, and that's one of the things that I've realized too. I have, I think, 10 games of Words with Friends going on. About 6 of them appear to be high skilled like you are. And they come up with words that it's like, whoa, never heard of this one. Um, but then the other 4 that I'm playing are either my level or below. And I seem to keep winning against them. And that's not even exciting anymore to me, you know, because it's like I'm learning words from you and the other 6 people. I'm now using them, so I'm winning, but yet I still struggle when I play, my top 6. But I enjoy it because I know that I'm getting better. So that's part of it.
Find the things that you enjoy in whatever game it is. So I might try a little harder when I'm playing the lower rated players to play words that I've recently learned.
Sure.
And in playing words with friends, for instance, you cannot play a phony against
Right. Right.
words with friends. It won't accept the word. However, for those of you that play both Scrabble and Words with Friends, be aware that they don't use the same
Right.
dictionary.
Exactly.
So if you're learning and like a sponge, absorbing all the words in Words with Friends, and then you go to play Scrabble, you play
So
one of those words, and uh, the game doesn't not allow it, but your opponent might challenge it. In Scrabble, for instance, there's only one 2-letter word with the letter J, and that's J-O.
right.
In Words with Friends, you can play J-E, J-A, and J-O. And many people who have lower Scrabble ratings than me can get me with those unusual
Right.
words. I know that when it happens, I don't know this word, but I know it's got to be acceptable in Words with Friends because if it wasn't, the game wouldn't have allowed
Right.
them to play it.
Yep.
So I keep seeing them. I have not been trying to learn those words because I know that one of them will trip me up when I get back to playing Scrabble
Absolutely.
full time. And I've had calls from friends this week saying, do you think it's okay if we can get back and play together? And I'm still hesitant, especially with the new COVID statistics, to not venture out of the house.
Right.
Because what a shame it would be if we went out to play a game of Scrabble
And then
and
get in.
somebody came down with it. Uh, I don't want me to contribute to that to my Scrabble friends.
Well,
And so we sit and talk on the
right.
phone.
Well,
Mm.
here in Ohio, as of today, we now have a 9 o'clock curfew. Um, so all restaurants, all stores must be closed. In fact, you're supposed to be home by 9. So I don't know how you can close a place and still be home. Um, and you know, it if we all do our job to get rid of this virus and to reduce the spread of it, we will be back, in clubs and everywhere else. So, um, we just got to wait it out a little longer.
Yeah, be patient uh, and use this time productively. If
Absolutely.
if last if when club exists, you go out, let's say, on a Wednesday evening to my club. You show up at 6 o'clock for the first game. The last game ends at 9:30. That's 3.5 hours. Don't necessarily use 3.5 hours, but use an hour and a half, and devote it to studying Scrabble words or play solitaire Scrabble. That's a very good teaching tool. Take 2 racks, put 7 on each rack, decide whether your right hand or left hand goes first. And you can do that by picking a tile with your right hand and your
Ooh,
left
that's a
hand.
good idea. Yeah.
One one closest to A goes first.
I love
Okay.
it.
Yeah. Play a word off of one rack. Even keep score if you want to keep score. If you want to use a timer, use the timer. Get used to it. Keep these skills updated, and don't forget your notebook. That and you can play this open. I do this with new people coming to club. Let's no challenges this game. Let's play it open. If you think you have a word there, reach for it. Try to grow beyond it. If it was a word, remember it. And the fact that you played it, you'll remember it. If it's not, you have to take it back. You'll remember that too. So,
And these are all lessons, and I think I probably say this every show, that these are all lessons that we can use in so many other areas of our life. Um, I've been taking these training courses online, and one of the things I learned that is acceptable, we can take these trainings open book. So that means you go through the training, you get to the quiz, but then you open up another window because they're all online, obviously. You open up another window, have that training there in the background, and answer the quiz as best as you can. But if you get stuck, go back and read those sections. And I'm finding that I now go into my weekend job feeling so secure. I may not know everything, but I know enough, and I keep expanding on that week by week. And it's doing basically what we're talking about here in Scrabble.
mhm,
So, if you're listening to this and you say, well, Scrabble's not my thing, but I'm taking classes online or I want to learn how to do something else. It's the same concepts.
mhm. Um, I've thought a lot about the flashcards that I make up to learn different sets of Scrabble words, primarily stems, but it can apply to anything. And I was thinking about my teaching days and something I missed out with helping students. And if people are out there, and if you have kids who are still in school, and let's say they love the computer, they love to be on it, but when it comes to their homework or things like that, they're not as interested.
Right.
I have created video flashcards for words. I'm thinking, wouldn't that student who would rather be on his mobile device or her computer use um, Word, well, not Word, use PowerPoint
Right.
to make flashcards? So the first screen, let's say on my Word, the first screen says Satine A, and then the next screen is the answer,
Okay.
which is Antasia Taenius. All right. So how does that apply to the student in school? They have a history lesson, say. All right. The first screen says Columbus, and then the second screen says, you know, 1492, you know, Nina Pinta Santa Maria, or the other way, have all the facts on top. Which explorer does it connect
Oh,
to?
okay.
Next screen, Columbus. So use what they have and use the tool that the kid really wants to be in, and
Absolutely.
show them. If they don't know how, they probably know how better than you do, but use the PowerPoint to make up these flashcards. um, Concepts in math, steps to do problems, uh, word usage in, language arts. You can use it in any way. And I, as thinking about it, I was real excited thinking, you know what, I'm going to go get a fifth grade textbook and make up a set of whiz cards, flashcards
What a great
for
idea.
unit number one, because they're so productive. And when they're on flashcards, you can, once they're on your computer, you can then print it out.
Right.
And
Well,
if you print it out front back, they'll be on larger sizes of paper,
right,
but you could even make that smaller,
right,
because these flashcards in your pocket, when I use the flashcards, I'm at the doctor's. I'm sitting there. I'm waiting for at least 20 minutes.
right,
And I pull the flashcards out. I go out for a cup of coffee and I'm sitting in the restaurant and I'm waiting for my food. I pull the flashcards out. I'm sitting in my car through the car wash and I've got 5, 10 minutes and I pull the flashcards out. And it's amazing how much we learn instead of just sitting there like a bump on a log.
right. Well, I know that's when my husband Rich was studying for his master's exam.
Mhm.
Um, he did everything in flashcards. And so, he did the same thing you did. He'd carry them around, and when he had time, he'd go through them. But in the evening, you know, I would read him a word or a description, and have him give me the response. And because it wasn't necessarily my expertise, I needed to have that flashcard with the answer on it. But I found I was learning along with him.
Sure.
And the first time he took his exam, because he was not as quick to writing, because for his exam, he had to actually handwrite his answers. And when you're used to using a computer, your handwriting is, we lose our handwriting,
Yeah.
basically. And so he wasn't fast enough. And he walked out of there so disappointed because he knew all the information. And so when he retook it, he actually had a doctor's note because he's on the autism spectrum. And so he had extra time and he found, wow, this is great. And when he walked out of that second test, he was beaming. He didn't even care what his score was, but he knew that he finished and he knew the information. And of course,
Hmm.
he passed. So, you know, I love these things that we're coming up with, because especially now, so many people working from home, and you're on your computers or on your handheld systems. What a great way to keep learning.
Right. And we have so many students now who have to learn from home.
Right,
And hopefully, some of their teachers have thought about this idea and have instructed them. But if you're a parent, especially if you have a struggling student who wants to get back to his games on computer, uh, this is a nice compromise. And if they really get caught up in it, they are going to just soar.
right,
And
exactly.
yeah.
Well, I love it.
Hmm. Let's look at one of these other things from Mike Barron. He gives a whole long list of things. You may or may not have considered this before, but he talks about consonant to vowel ratio, the ratio of consonants to vowels, and
Okay.
he's talking about it on your rack. He begins by saying a complete tile bag has 56 consonants, 42 vowels, more consonants than vowels. When playing off letters, try to leave a relatively balanced group of letters on your rack, ideally with a difference no greater than 1 between the number of consonants and vowels. Now, a lot of times I'll see people playing and they'll ask me what to play off. One more thing that you should do if you want to become better is after you decide what you're playing off, look at your rack, look at what's left. Um, this might influence your thinking if you have more than one word available.
Okay.
Okay. Let's say I see I'm going to take the word water, Water, and that's going to leave 2 tiles on my rack. And let's say they're both, I'm not sure if this is a good example because I'm doing it off the top of
Right.
my head.
Sure.
Let's say they are both consonants and I'm playing Water. I'm playing off 3, I'm leaving 2. I might want to leave 1 consonant and 1 vowel. So let's look at the word water and let's see if there's something we can play um, so that we can leave 1 consonant and 1 vowel.
Okay.
This seems like a real difficult puzzle to do, and maybe it's good enough at the beginning to not put such a big hurdle in front of us, but it's something we should know. The goal is to have 3 vowels, 4 consonants, or 4 vowels, 3 consonants.
Okay.
Let that sort of be your guide when it comes to, let's say you have the ugliest rack and you know you have to trade some, helping you decide what to keep on your rack.
Okay. That
All
makes,
right.
yeah.
And there's another piece to that which makes it more challenging. It's, let's say um, you have a rack of 1 vowel and 6 consonants, and you know you need to trade something. Do you know what's still in the bag? Because you're going to try to get more vowels,
Right.
obviously. Are there more vowels? Are there mostly vowels? Are there mostly consonants in the bag? And experts can do this. Most novices don't even think about it. They'll trade away 3 consonants and they draw 3 consonants.
Right. Yep.
And they'll say, oh, that's terrible. But it seems that when the expert plays off the 3 consonants, they'll get 2 vowels and a consonant. They'll get the better draw. Well, how does it happen all the time? It's like when I first started playing Scrabble, and the experts were getting 2 or 3 bingos per game, and I was struggling to get 1. And how does that happen? Are they that lucky? Well, the more you know, the luckier you become. And in terms of trading and exchanging, I don't know how many of you have seen the score sheet where on the side all 100 letters are listed in columns,
Right.
9 A's, 2 B's. And while the game is going on, the experts,
It's
when their
tracking it.
time is over, are crossing off the letters that correlate to the letters played on the board.
Right.
So with a glance, they can see what's left unseen. What's unseen is either in the bag or on their opponent's rack. So they can tell very quickly the bag has an awful lot of consonants in it. So if I trade off consonants,
We
I'm
get
possibly going to get consonants. So
right.
now let me think one step further. If I'm going to trade off consonants, I might be willing to get more consonants if they create blends like BL,
Okay.
CR, things like that. Things that the Y's aren't seen. I keep an L, so maybe I end up with LY.
Got it.
They can tell it by looking at their distribution on their tracking sheet where they've crossed off those letters. Now, knowing that might tempt you to start tracking. And I encourage you to learn how to track. But before you start tracking during the game, learn how to track with 95 to 100% accuracy. Now, there's a simple task that I use to teach tracking, and most people that are new to the game think this is crazy and a waste of time. But I've found it to be helpful, and many of my students have reported back to me that it helped them. So here's what you do. Sit down in front of the board, have your time clock there, take the bag of tiles, take out of the tile bag, a bunch of tiles, most of the tiles, leave a small handful still in the bag
Okay.
without looking and seeing what they are. Turn the tiles that are on your board, turn them all upright. You can make words with them if you please. You can just leave them there randomly.
Okay.
Just be able to see what's on the board. All right. Take a tracking sheet. And if you don't have one, you can make one. Top row, the A's, 9 A's. Next, 2 B's. Next, 2 C's. Next, 4 D's. And you can usually, most Scrabble boards on the side
Yeah.
have the distribution.
Right.
So you have that on the sheet. Sit down with the sheet, your tiles on the board, and a clock. Start the clock. Now, every tile on the board, find the corresponding on your tracking sheet, cross it off. Then the next, cross it off. You cross off all the letters on your board, stop your clock. It's taken you 4 minutes and 39 seconds on your clock to track all of these tiles. Now, take the remaining tiles from your tile bag, see if they correspond to the tracking sheet
Ah,
for, for the tiles that are not crossed off. Take each one, and this time, instead of crossing them off, draw a circle around them. All right. Now you're finished. Does everything match up?
probably the first time, no.
Probably the first, second, third, fourth, fifth time, no. We become distracted during this
Right.
time that we're crossing things off. Uh, but do it again and again and again. One more thing. At the end of this first trial, get a notebook and put down first try, uh, tracking sheet, um, missed 2, tiles in the bag, missed 3, time on the clock, 4 minutes, 39 seconds. Now, in each additional time you try that, you're going to try to get better and
Sure.
better and better. If you can get to 100% accuracy in under 3 minutes, you are ready to track in the game. If you don't get to those levels, you can track the Q, Z, X, and the blanks and the S's, but don't make an attempt to track everything, because if you track incorrectly, that's going to mess up the other things you're trying to
Sure.
figure out with that information. Now, I know many of the players who are not experts who track all the time, but they don't know how to use the information that they get.
Oh my gosh.
So, tracking isn't a panacea of its own. It's a panacea when you know how to use the information that you receive. And that sort of goes along with everything else in the game. And I think that's where we'll stop today.
Okay.
But Mike has a dozen other points to make out, and each one is a mind awakening opportunity. And even someone who plays as long and as often as me, I love to read this stuff because it reminds me of the things that I know but are not in sight. And so they haven't escaped me, but I need to bring myself to witness it in
Absolutely.
order to make it current again.
Well, again, we want to thank you for our weekly podcast. Next week, we're taking a break from Scrabble. Um, I am starting a brand new show called Lessons Learned. And it's not necessarily about Scrabble, but my first guest is Gary Moss, my big brother. Um, so I'm going to learn a little bit more about him, and we're going to share it in this new podcast. And if anybody is out there who's listening says, hey, I want to be a guest and want to share my lessons learned, you can contact us at newclevelandradio@gmail.com. And Gary, if people want this word list that we've been talking about or these pointers, how can they reach you?
Send me an email at jftsoi.moss@gmail.com. And I think you'll find that on the contacts on the website.
Absolutely. Well, have a great day. Everybody stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, and let's see COVID leave the scene. Have,
Yes.
have a great day.
Goodbye.